A 29-year-old guy named Satoru Fujinuma goes to an art job interview, gets turned down, and heads home feeling super bummed about a bunch of stuff. At his pizza delivery job, he's out delivering an order when, out of nowhere, time rewinds, and the same events start happening again. He realizes something's off and tries to figure it out. That's when he spots a truck driver dozing off while speeding straight toward a kid crossing the road. Satoru jumps into action, swerves to stop the truck, and wonders why he's even getting involved. He manages to flip the truck over, saving the kid, but ends up getting hit by a car. Satoru wakes up in the hospital and sees his coworker and old classmate, Eri Katagiri. She tells him he's been out for 2 days and asks if he remembers who he is and why he's there. He tells her his name, age, and what caused the accident. Eri says it's crazy he didn't get seriously hurt and asks if there's anyone she should call for him, but he says there's no one to bother. She mentions she saw the whole thing go down and is impressed he saved the kid. She also tells him the truck driver had a heart attack behind the wheel and died. She says she already explained everything to their manager, so he doesn't need to stress about the delivery bike and should just come back to work. Satoru asks her about her dream job, but she brushes him off, saying they're not close enough for that kind of talk, and she heads out. On his way home, Satoru explains this weird time loop thing he calls revival, where he gets sent back 1 to 5 minutes before something bad happens and has to relive the moment. Thanks to it, he's been able to stop a bunch of accidents. When he gets home, he finds his mom, Sachiko Fujinuma, cooking in his kitchen. She says she checked on him at the hospital but left when he was still out cold, so she came to his place instead. She tells him she's planning to stay with him for a bit, but Satoru says she should just get a hotel. She ignores him. While watching the news about a missing first grader who was later found, Sachiko asks Satoru if he remembers an incident from when he was in 5th grade. As he lies in bed, he starts thinking back to when he was a kid and used to hang out with a guy named Yuki-san. 6 months after that incident, a man named Shiratori Jun, who was Yuuki, got arrested as a serial kidnapper. Later, when Satoru and his mom are leaving the mall, revival kicks in again. He tries to figure out what's about to go wrong but doesn't see anything obvious. He asks his mom to look around for anything weird. She spots a man with glasses covering his face and holding a little girl, but he quickly gets into his car and drives off alone. Sachiko snaps a picture of the car. Right then, Eri calls Satoru and catches up with them. Sachiko invites her over for dinner, and Eri agrees. Meanwhile, the man with glasses is watching them from afar. Back at the house, Sachiko makes dinner and calls them to eat. She jokes that she thought Eri might be Satoru's girlfriend but realizes she was wrong. Eri laughs it off, saying Satoru's just a friend she looks up to. After dinner, Eri gets ready to leave, and Satoru offers to walk her to the station. When he gets back, he tells his mom to stop making it sound like Eri could be his future wife, but Sachiko teases him, saying he still has a shot. Then she casually mentions a kidnapping attempt was stopped in the supermarket parking lot but quickly says she's just kidding. Satoru is at a store when he spots the name of his classmate, Hinazuki Kayothe, girl who was kidnapped and murdered. It makes him remember the last time he saw her sitting alone at the park. That was the last time he ever saw her alive. At the same store, Sachiki starts thinking about what went down in the parking lot. She's convinced it was an attempted kidnapping. She remembers the guy hiding his face when he looked at her, which means he recognized her. She keeps saying she knows those eyes from somewhere. Suddenly, it clicks. She remembers who he is and realizes maybe Shiratori Jun wasn't the real culprit after all. On her way home, she thinks about the crimes this man committed and how the case is still unresolved. She plans to tell Satoru everything, but before she can, she hears footsteps behind her. Out of nowhere, a man in a suit and glasses stabs her in the back. As she turns to look at him, she realizes she was Wrights, the guy from the parking lot. She tries to call Satoru for help, but it's no use. While heading home, Satoru crosses paths with the man in glasses, who just walks right past him. When Satoru gets to his house, he notices the front door is wide open. He rushes inside to check on his mom and finds her lying on the floor, dead in a pool of blood. A neighbor comes in, sees Satoru's hands covered in blood, and assumes he's the killer. She calls the cops, and Satoru takes off running. As he's being chased, he suddenly gets thrown back in time to 1988 when he was just a kid. Satoru heads to class and notices the date, February 15th. The teacher walks in and tells him to find his seat. Confused, Satoru picks an empty desk, but the kid next to him says it belongs to Hinazuki. Satoru starts questioning if everything is real since his revival has sent him 18 years into the past. During break, he grabs his bag and leaves the classroom, running past Hinazuki as he rushes home to check on his mom. When he gets home, his mom isn't there, and he remembers she's still at work. He waits for her, and eventually, Sachiko shows up and wakes him. She asks what he wants for dinner and starts cooking. While eating, she mentions how upset he got earlier when his recorder went missing. Satoru breaks down crying, apologizing to her. He realizes this revival is a second chance and promises not to waste it. After dinner, he thanks his mom for the meal. The next day at school, Satoru wonders if he's about to relive 18 years of his life. He figures revival must be about preventing something bad from happening. This is his chance to save his mom. Then, he spots Hinazuki Kayo. In class, he notices a bruise on her leg. When the teacher assigns groups, Satoru starts remembering everyone's names. Kenya, one of his group mates, asks if he likes Hinazuki Hinazuki. Satoru says no, but admits she's been on his mind. Kazu offers to set up a meeting with her after school. Later, Satoru approaches Hinazuki and asks if they can be friends. She questions why he'd even think that, and says she gets it since he's a fake, just like her. As she walks away, he insists he really wants to be friends. She turns back and asks if he'd kill someone for her, then leaves as a man in uniform watches them. Back in class, Kazu asks how the talk went. Satoru says they just chatted, but Kazu tells him he's got a shot with her. Kenya suggests taking things slow since they'll still be in the same class next year. After school, Satoru thanks Kenya for earlier. Kenya says if Hinazuki's on his mind, it must be important and offers to help if needed. Satoru credits Kazu for giving him the chance to talk to her. Kenya asks about the conversation, but before Satoru can answer, a car speeds past them. At home, Satoru flips through the student anthology and finds Hinazuki's essay titled "The Town with Only Me Erased." In it, she writes about wanting to escape to an island far away, without pain or sadness, where she can think about the town that erased her. Satoru feels like the essay is a cry for help but closes the book when his mom arrives. During dinner, Satoru asks if he can invite friends over for his birthday. His mom agrees, but says their small apartment can't fit too many people. He reassures her he only needs space for 5. Sachiko says it's the first time he's asked for something like this and offers to get a big cake. Meanwhile, Satoru starts planning how to get closer to Hinazuki. Lying in bed, he thinks about his plans when Sachiko teases him about having a girlfriend. He pretends to be asleep. The next day at school, Osamu tells Satoru that Hinazuki's leaving and asks if he's going after her. Satoru thanks him and runs to find her. He suspects her mom is abusive, which is why Hinazuki hangs out at the park until dark. When he finds her, he calls out to her. She asks what he's doing there. Satoru says he wants to be her friend, but admits he can't kill anyone for her. She laughs, saying she was joking, and asks if he's just pretending to care. Satoru admits she's probably right, wants people to like him, to have friends. Hinazuki tells him if you fake it long enough, it can become real. Her words remind Satoru of something Eri once said, and he feels nostalgic. He invites Hinazuki to his birthday party and asks if she'll come. She says yes and runs off. Satoru vows not to leave her alone and promises to change the future. At school, the kids are having an ice hockey match. Satoru is up against Hamada. Satoru brags about being a starter on the ice hockey team that won the national championship. A girl tells Hinazuki to wish Satoru good luck, and she does. When the game starts, Satoru takes off fast and leaves Hamada in the dust. But then he starts wondering if winning even matters, so he lets Hamada pass him and ends up losing on purpose. After the game, Hamada storms over, grabs Satoru by the shirt, and yells that he hates him. Satoru realizes he just repeated a mistake he made 18 years ago. Later, back at school, Satoru asks Hinazuki when her birthday is, but she doesn't answer. Instead, she says he promised he wouldn't lie to her. Satoru apologizes, saying he felt like the game was supposed to be Hamada's moment. Hinazuki walks away, saying it's fine because they're both just liars anyway. Hiromi shows up and invites Satoru to walk home together, but Satoru tells him to go ahead without him. Satoru heads to the staff room to look for a book, but gets interrupted by his teacher, Yashiro Gaku. Yashiro asks if he's there because of Hinazuki. Satoru says no and explains he just wanted to know her birthday. Yashiro finds the book and casually mentions that Satoru and Hinazuki share the same birthday. He says Hinazuki is probably too shy to bring it up and suggests Satoru celebrate with her and make it special. Satoru goes to the park to find Hinazuki but doesn't see her. A paper plane flies by and he spots Yuki-san. They chat at Yuki's place and Satoru asks if Yuki knows Hinazuki. Yuki says he's talked to her a few times at the park. Satoru remembers when people questioned Yuki during an investigation and leaves soon after. As he walks home, he's convinced Yuki isn't capable of hurting anyone and vows to figure things out. When Satoru gets home, he finds the front door locked, so he goes around to the back. While trying the back door, he steps on a glove and follows some footprints to a small shed. Inside, he finds Hinazuki lying on the floor, covered in bruises. She begs him not to look at her and to close the door. Satoru takes off his jacket to cover her, but she screams at him to leave. Suddenly, her mom shows up, shoves Satoru out of the way, and grabs Hinazuki by the neck, dragging her home. When Satoru asks about Hinazuki's injuries, her mom brushes it off, and Hinazuki claims she just fell. At home, Hinazuki's mom forces her face into a sink full of ice, telling her she needs to heal up by Monday, or she'll take all the blame for what happened. The next day at school, Satoru's waiting around for Hinazuki, but she doesn't show up right away. When she finally comes in late, she heads straight to her seat, looking totally unfazed. As she takes off her scarf, Satoru notices a nasty bruise on the back of her neck. Later in the teacher's lounge, Yashiro asks Satoru if he knows why Hinazuki's always late on Mondays. Satoru straight up tells him it's because her mom beats her on Saturdays. Yashiro says he's noticed too, but hasn't brought it up in class because he doesn't want her to get treated differently. He explains that they've been suspicious of Hinazuki's mom since last May, but nothing's been done about it. Satoru asks why, and Yashiro says her mom's is really good at covering it up. Apparently, the Child Welfare Center showed up 3 times just last month, but they haven't gotten a chance to properly question her family yet. Yashiro tells Satoru they just need solid proof, and then they can get Hinazuki away from her mom, but he warns that if that happens, Hinazuki won't be in their class anymore. Satoru says he doesn't care as long as she's safe. Back in class, Satoru tells the teacher he lost everyone's lunch money. A girl named Misato immediately accuses Hinazuki of stealing it. Satoru's like, "Why would you say that?" Misato says it's because Hinazuki hasn't paid for her lunch and suggests they search everyone's bags. As they start looking, Hinazuki pulls out the money herself, and everyone starts laughing at her. Satoru shuts them down, saying Hinazuki would never steal, even if she's broke. Yashiro steps in and tells the class Hinazuki's on lunch duty, so it makes sense she had the money. Later, while walking on the school grounds, Hinazuki thanks Satoru for having her back. She mentions how Misato's always hated her, but once invited her over for Christmas, just to show off her big tree. Satoru suggests they go check out a Christmas tree that night. They climb up a hill together and get a great view of a big, lit-up tree. Satoru says they should come back in the summer to see it again. Meanwhile, back at school, Kenya is talking to someone mysterious. Satoru talks about how Hinazuki Keo is going to be the first victim in a serial kidnapping and murder case in a week. He's planning a birthday party with her and is determined to make sure nothing bad happens. He says he'll wipe those crimes from history. While having breakfast with his mom, Satoru tells her he wants to go out on Saturday. She asks if it's a date, and he confirms it. Sachiko, his mom, tells him to bring Hinazuki over, but he says she's already coming for the birthday party. She reminds him to be careful when he goes out. At school, Satoru is figuring out how to get Hinazuki away from her house and her mom's abuse. He suggests to his friends that they should hit up the science center on Saturday, but they turn him down, saying if he's going with Hinazuki, he's better off without them. Hinazuki asks if something's up, and he tells her he said he couldn't hang out because he has a date with her. She mentions her mom told her to come straight home on Saturdays. Satoru insists he wants to take her somewhere fun and promises to talk to her mom for her. In the locker room, Yashiro calls Kenya to the staff room. Later at Hinazuki's house, her mom says she's not letting them go out alone. Satoru explains they're not just playing, they're learning stuff. He asks why she's so against Hinazuki going out. She replies that they're kids, and Saturdays are when Hinazuki helps her at home. Then she questions what Satoru gets out of taking her out. He says he just wants to save his friend and immediately realizes he shouldn't have said that. She asks Hinazuki if she wants to go with Satoru. When Hinazuki nods, her mom slaps her, but Sachiko stops her. The mom says it's none of Sachiko's business, but Sachiko argues that it is since her kid is involved. She tells Hinazuki to go inside the house. On the way home, Satoru asks his mom if she knows what's going on. She says no, but after their chat and seeing Hinazuki's mom, she can guess. The next day, Satoru and Hinazuki hit up the science center. Hinazuki mentions it's pretty empty. While they're chatting, Satoru notices something strange and excuses himself to the bathroom. He wonders if he's experiencing deja vu but brushes it off. When he goes back to find Hinazuki, the same scene plays out again. She thanks him for inviting her and asks if he knows she loves the place. Satoru starts to think that maybe he picked this spot because he knew she liked it. As he's lost in thought, she repeats something he was just thinking, and he suddenly remembers having the same chat 18 years ago when he bumped into Hinazuki. He starts to wonder if he's stuck in a loop, trying to change the future while repeating the past. He helps her with her coat, and she says she's happy she could come. Eventually, their friends join in on the fun. The next day in class, Hinazuki arrives early and greets Satoru. As class kicks off, Satoru can't shake the thought that Hinazuki is going to be killed the next day, and that's when the real fight begins. While they're walking home after class, he tells her he'll swing by to pick her up tomorrow so they can walk to school together. The next day, Satoru wakes up early and races over to Hinazuki's house. He grabs her hand and they stroll to school together. After school, he suggests they check out the kids' center. She says she wants to head home early, but he insists. They have a blast at the kids' center, but she eventually says she wants to go home. On their way back, they pass the park where she was killed 18 years ago, and he grips her hand tightly. He drops her off and promises to pick her up the next day. The following day, he wakes up super early and heads to Hinazuki's place. She opens the door to find him chilling outside, waiting for her. When they get to school, Yoshiro calls them over to help him with some work. Later, they go shopping for his birthday. When they get home, their friends and Sachiko surprise them with a joint birthday celebration. Satoru asks how they pulled it off without him knowing. Kenya explains they got Yoshiro to make them work after school. Hinazuki apologizes to Satoru for not having a gift for him. He tells her not to sweat it, that she can give it to him later. While they're having a good time, Satoru gives Hinazuki a gift, and she thanks him and everyone else. He walks her home after the party, and she promises to give him his gift the next day. He runs home feeling like he's changed history and falls asleep peacefully. The next day, he rushes to school since he's running late but makes it to class on time. Yoshiro mentions that only Hinazuki is late. Tension creeps onto Satoru's face as he realizes Hinazuki didn't show up that day, and their promise was left unfulfilled. Satoru is wondering why Hinazuki is late for class. He's lost in his thoughts until Yoshiro snaps him back to reality and asks if something's bothering him. After class, Satoru rushes over to Hinazuki's house. He knocks on the door but gets no answer. He heads to the back store and spots some rubber boot prints. Hinazuki's dad is hiding nearby, asking her mom what they should do. Tears well up in Satoru's eyes as he goes to the park, but he doesn't see Hinazuki there. The next day, Satoru sees his mom chatting with a TV reporter and figures he must be one of her old co-workers. Sachiko tells him it's not his fault. Satoru says he doesn't want Hinazuki to be all alone anymore. She tells him it's pointless to blame himself for things that have already happened. She advises him to go back to school, saying he'll just get depressed being by himself. Later at school, Yoshiro tells the students that what he said about Hinazuki staying home with a cold was a lie. He explains that she's been taken to her grandmother's for family reasons and is doing well in Sapporo. As the class starts spreading different rumors about Hinazuki, Satoru's friends come to lift his spirits. In the staff room, Yoshiro tells Satoru that the story about Hinazuki was a joint decision by the school and PTA and asks him to go along with it for now. Satoru shares that there's been a media blackout, but a police car has been parked near Hinazuki's place for the last few days. He mentions that her mom is also a suspect at this point, and just 6 days after Hinazuki went missing, another person was reported missing. Back in class, Yoshiro tells the students they can only leave school grounds with a guardian. After class, Kenya asks Satoru if he heard about Nakanishi Aya from Izumi Elementary. Kenya says a friend there told him she ran away to her grandpa's place. Satoru thinks that sounds just like Hinazuki. As days go by, Satoru notes that history is definitely repeating itself. He observes that the police car parked near Hinazuki's place only showed up occasionally after Nakanishi Aya's disappearance. He figures the investigation must have shifted to serial kidnappings. While walking down the road, he sees Hinazuki's mom taking out the trash with a pair of half-knitted gloves inside. He realizes it's the gift Hinazuki was planning to give him and screams while running. He suddenly wakes up and finds himself back in 2006, running from the cops. He sneaks a look and sees they're searching for him as the main suspect in his mom's death, claiming they have an eyewitness. He knows he has to get ready to bail. While hiding under a bridge, he struggles to figure out why his mom was murdered. He gets a call from a coworker, and they meet up. His friend tells him Eri is worried about him, but insists he should eat first. After grabbing a bite, Satoru is told he can hang out for as long as he wants, and his friend leaves the living room. Satoru turns on the news, and they're talking about his mom's death, painting him as the bad guy. He looks out the window and sees his buddy chatting with the police. He decides to leave the house and runs into Eri outside. She tells him to hop on her bike, and they take off. At her place, he apologizes for dragging her into this mess, and asks why she's helping him. She replies that there's no way he could hurt such a loving mom. She can't believe he's being chased when he's the one who's hurting the most. She mentions she read a part of the book he left at work, the one he had bookmarked. It's about the Hinazuki Kaio murder case, where she dies at the doll festival on March 3rd. Satoru grabs the book and sees that the contents have changed. He realizes that if he goes back one more time, he can still save Hinazuki. The next day, he wakes up in Eri's room and reads the letter she left him. Satoru looks for ways to find his mom's killer. When he heads back to Eri's place, the manager tries to call the cops, but Eri stops him and asks why he's calling the police. He tries to explain, but she lands a solid punch to his face. He tells her he's worried about her. She fires back that if he really cares, he shouldn't call the cops to the house of the family helping her. Later, she apologizes to Satoru at the bridge, but he thanks her instead, saying he finally got some rest. He asks how she can trust him. She says it's not that she trusts him, but she wants to. Satoru tells her to go home and tell the police he threatened her to hide him. She says she'll leave, but only to bring him a change of clothes. While she's packing his clothes, she sees a text on her phone and realizes it's from the killer. Eri notices smoke coming from her door and sees the killer setting her house on fire. As she tries to escape, she collapses on the floor. Satoru sees the house on fire and hears that Eri is trapped inside. He rushes into the burning building, searching for her. He finally finds her on the floor, and as he picks her up, she slips her phone into his pocket. While trying to find a way out through the flames, their manager bursts in to help. He tells Satoru to head to the back so Eri doesn't get caught up in everything. Under the bridge, Satoru worries about Eri's safety. He suspects the fire was set by the killer, and then notices the text on the phone. Eri snuck into his pocket. He realizes the killer started the fire to take out Eri and make it look like he did it. He figures Eri hid her phone from the police, so they wouldn't see the message. Determined, he decides to track down the killer or get caught trying. The next day, Fujinuma Satoru calls a guy in an office and introduces himself. The guy says if he's really Fujinuma Satoru, then it's nice to meet him. Satoru asks for his name, but the guy says they'll save that for their meeting the next day. When they meet in a shop, the guy calls Satoru and introduces himself as Sawada, who used to work at the TV Ishikari city desk. Satoru recognizes him as the guy who spoke to his mom when Hinazuki went missing. Sawada tells Satoru he didn't call the cops, nor did he kill his mom. Satoru asks him why he doesn't suspect him. Sawada responds that a mom like Sachiko wouldn't raise a murderer. He suggests they talk about what he discussed with her on the phone. They flash back to when Sachiko called Sawada, asking if he remembers the serial murder case from 18 years ago. He mentions that Shiratori Jun is on death row but still hasn't confessed. Sachiko insists Shiratori is innocent and claims she knows who the real killer is. Sawada tells Satoru there's an incident he wants to discuss. It's about the murder of Hinazuki Kayo. They flash back to March 2, 1988. He explains that Hinazuki was locked in a shed after her mom beat her and froze to death. Initially, the police suspected the mom, thinking she hid the body, but in reality, Hinazuki went missing from the shed on the Twan. When her mom realized she was gone on the 3rd, she casually called Sachiko to ask about Hinazuki. Sawada reveals she was kidnapped by Shiratori Jun. He explains the official story of what happened. Satoru insists Yuuki would never do something like that. Sawada mentions that before Hinazuki Kayo, there were other cases of girls Sugita, Hiromi, and Nakanishi Aya who disappeared from the next town. He says the culprit was caught right away and denied any wrongdoing, just like Shiratori. He asks Satoru if he sees a pattern, considering his current situation. Satoru suddenly realizes that both Hinazuki and Sachiko were killed by someone who frames others for their crimes. At the hospital, Eri steps out of her room and overhears 2 bodyguards talking about how Satoru forced her to help him take out his mom, and then tried to shut her up afterward. While checking the newspaper, she can't believe they're going after Satoru for murder and arson. As she wonders who would believe her, someone interrupts her thoughts. Back at the office, Satoru hands Sawada the phone Eri slipped into his pocket. Sawada mentions that the killer tried to mess with the murder investigation by pinning the arson on him. Satoru tells Sawada he thinks Eri is in danger too. He explains how the killer took out his mom and suggests it might be someone he knows. Sawada says they could use this info to track the killer down. He tells Satoru he's heading to the hospital and that he can check out the murder reports from 18 years ago on his computer. When he gets to the hospital, he finds there are no open rooms except for 201. He gets past the bodyguards and walks into Eri's room, only to be shocked that the person in the bed isn't Eri but her mom. Eri tells her mom there's no way Satoru could have killed his mother. She explains how he came to save her from the fire. She says people think she's in on it and nobody believes her or Satoru. Her mom says she believes her and tells her to leave. As Eri heads out of the hospital, a car starts following her. Satoru gets a call from Eri and she suggests they meet at their usual spot. They meet under the bridge and she tells him she suspects Nishizono the most. She mentions how the manager treats him with respect and that he's probably a city councilor based on the badge he wears. Satoru says he didn't see that name on the list and tries to figure out what's going on. Eri tells him not to stress about it. Satoru says he's lucky to have met her. Suddenly, they hear footsteps and see the police have surrounded them. Satoru gets arrested for murder and attempted murder due to arson. As he's being taken away, he spots the guy he ran into the night his mom was killed. The officers take Satoru to their car. He says he has some unfinished business and wishes he could get another shot at a revival. He screams and suddenly finds himself back at the science center with Hinazuki. As his friends join them, he declares he has to succeed this time because it's his last chance. He insists this is the final revival. On their way home, Satoru promises to treat them to pancakes. Kenya asks if he read the book he lent him. Satoru says no, and jokes about remembering a book he borrowed 18 years ago. Kenya encourages him to give it a shot when he gets home. When he arrives, his mom greets him and says, "Dinner will be ready soon." She notices him just standing there crying, and asks if he got into a fight with Hinazuki. He tells her she can take a direct train to Ueno and suggests she keep that in mind. The next day, Satoru goes to school with Hinazuki and says he can't be picky about how he does things this time. In class, he apologizes to Kenya for losing the book he borrowed. Kenya tells him not to stress about it since it never really existed. He mentions he's been seeing a more serious side of Satoru and is happy about it, but he has to ask Satoru a question. He wants to know who Satoru really is because it feels like he's a different person now. Satoru jokingly claims he's a superhero, which makes Kenya laugh. Then, Satoru drops a bombshell. He tells Kenya that Hinazuki is going to be murdered. He explains he saw where she was abused and vows to stop it. Kenya wants to help too, and they shake hands. As they walk into class, Yoshiro tells them to stand in the hallway with buckets of water. After class, Satoru asks Hiromi and Kenya to help him take Hinazuki to the kids center and wait for him. Later, at Yuki's house, Satoru asks if he's seen Hinazuki. Yuki says she's been hanging out with his group lately. Satoru realizes that the killer must have seen him and Hinazuki together and is trying to frame him. He heads to the kids center and finds them playing basketball. He knows he has to avoid any major changes until March Twan to keep things from getting messy. After spending March honest just like last time, the fateful day is back. He decides he's going to change the future with his actions today. He spots Hinazuki's mom and plans to take her out. out. Just as he's about to do it, Kenya stops him and tells him to calm down. He reveals he's been following Satoru for the past 2 days and knows how desperate he is to save Hinazuki, so he wouldn't think twice about risking his own safety. Satoru asks Kenya to help him get the police to stop Hinazuki's mom from abusing her. Kenya warns it'll cause a big scene, but Satoru doesn't care if he gets punished as long as it saves Hinazuki. After the birthday party, Satoru offers to walk Hinazuki home. On the way, he jokingly tells her he's going to kidnap her. He takes her to an old bus and claims it's the hockey team's club room. Kenya shows up and meets them. As they light up the bus, Kenya says it's a pretty cool hideout and he wouldn't mind living there alone. Satoru tells Hinazuki he'll be back later that night and will knock 3 times. She thanks them both as they leave. Satoru shows his appreciation to Kenya, but Kenya insists there's no need since the hard part is just beginning. He says if this goes public, they should just act clueless. When he gets home, Satoru asks his mom if Hinazuki's mom called. She says she hasn't. He tells her he has an early day tomorrow, so she doesn't need to stay up. Satoru leaves to meet Hinazuki. He knocks 3 times, and she tells him to come in. He gives her a cup of noodles, and she says she's never had a night like this before. Satoru mentions he's planning a camping trip with Kenya and the guys for the summer and invites her to join. The next day, Kenya wakes them up, saying they should leave before the Izumi Elementary kids show up. At school, Yoshiro calls attendance and notices Hinazuki is late. Kenya tells Satoru that nothing has happened yet and decides not to look for her just yet. While Hinazuki is sleeping, an unknown man enters the bus and she thinks it's Satoru. Hinazuki hears footsteps and thinks it's Satoru, but quickly realizes it's not him. An unknown guy is trying to break into the bus. After a while, it gets quiet. She peeks through the window and breathes a sigh of relief when she doesn't see anyone. At home, Sachiko is making breakfast. Satoru asks her why she's up so early. While they eat, Sachiko says she has something to ask him. She wonders what he's doing out so early and with who. He tells her it's a secret. After getting ready to leave, Sachiko hands him lunch, saying he'll get hungry since he's heading out so early. He goes to meet Hinazuki and gives her his lunch, apologizing for leaving her all alone. Satoru heads off to school, promising to come back later. At school, Yoshiro mentions that Hinazuki is absent again today and starts the class. In the staff room, Satoru tells Yoshiro he stopped by her place. Yoshiro says he must be worried, but he looks pretty chill. He adds that he even called her mom's workplace, but they said she hadn't shown up for her shift. Satoru asks if he could call the cops or child welfare. Yoshiro says he contacted child welfare yesterday, and they said they'd go today. He mentions he'll visit Hinazuki's place with them. As Satoru runs down the path, he feels relieved that Yoshiro is taking action to help her. The child welfare team, along with Yoshiro, knocks on Hinazuki's door but gets no answer. Yoshiro goes inside and checks everywhere. He tells the workers that Hinazuki's mom was here recently, and that she must have bolted out the back when they rang the bell. Back at the bus, Satoru tells Hinazuki that child welfare came by, but her mom wasn't home. He reassures her that things will be sorted out tonight or tomorrow. He mentions that she'll be separated from her mom, and she says nothing would make her happier than that. She then gives Satoru the birthday present she made for him, and he tears up, feeling the moment he's been waiting for. Hinazuki surprises everyone by asking Satoru to stay with her tonight. She explains that someone tried to get into the bus, and she was scared. She mentions that he dropped a bag, and Kenya goes to check it out. Satoru is the only one who realizes right away what the stuff is for. He figures out they're still caught in the loop of the serial kidnapping and murder case. Satoru shares how, back in March, Hinazuki vanished from their storage shed at home. He goes on to explain how the rubber boot prints found nearby matched the ones from the Shiratori's place. He keeps detailing the official story of what went down. Satoru wraps it up by saying that the bus isn't safe. He points out that it's right at the center of this whole mess. Satoru insists they need to get out of there fast. Kana asks if he has a backup plan, and he confirms he does. While they unpack, Satoru tries to get the killer's footprint stuck in his mind. He thinks about how to keep Hinazuki away from the case, even if it means pushing his luck. He mentions that child welfare is making moves, so things are definitely shifting in the future. Satoru's plan B turns out to be his house. They all head in and greet Sachiko. She tells Satoru to explain what's going on. He takes Hinazuki's hand and says this is what happens when he doesn't give up. Sachiko gives Hinazuki a pat on the head and says she's proud of them. She heads off to finish making dinner and tells the kids to come join them. After they eat, Hiro and Kenya say their goodbyes. Sachiko calls Yoshiro and tells him that Satoru and Hinazuki are back at her place. She asks if Hinazuki will have to go to an orphanage somewhere. He says he has a plan for that. He then asks Sachiko for a favor, and she agrees to help. Sachiko goes to find the kids and tells one of them to go take a bath. Satoru tells Hinazuki to go, but she's shy, so Sachiko offers to take a bath with her and helps wash her hair. Once they're all clean, Sachiko tells them it's bedtime, and they all get ready to sleep together. The next morning, Sachiko calls them for breakfast. Hinazuki cries because she's never been treated this well before. Meanwhile, at Hinazuki's house, her mom is flipping out until she hears the doorbell. She opens the door and sees Hinazuki. She tries to hit her, but stops when she spots Sachiko and Satoru with her. She says she would have known they were behind this. She asks how they managed to hide someone else's kid. Sachiko asks if she even looked for Hinazuki over the last 3 days. She snaps back, asking if Sachiko is trying to make her look like a bad mom. In a fit of rage, she grabs a shovel and swings it at Sachiko, but only manages to scratch her nose a bit. Sachiko tells her the only thing she cares about is herself, and that's enough. She keeps yelling that Sachiko is making her look like a villain in front of her daughter. Satoru tells her she deserves it for locking Hinazuki in a shed and not giving a damn when she went missing for 3 days. She fires back at Satoru, saying he has no clue about the struggles and responsibilities of being a parent. She shoves Hinazuki and tries to hit Satoru, but the workers from the Child Welfare Center step in. They say they're there to talk about her daughter, Kayo-chan. One of them mentions they asked Fujinuma for help since they couldn't get her to meet them. Yashiro apologizes to Sachiko for putting her in this position. Sachiko says she wants to give Akemi a piece of her mind, so she's glad to help out. Akemi claims they kidnapped her daughter and says they should call the cops. The workers tell her they need to discuss her usual relationship with Kayo. Akemi asks what's wrong with how she treats her kid. They inform her that Kayo-chan needs to be taken into custody. Akemi disagrees, insisting she's Kayo's legal guardian. The workers point out that she didn't even try to look for her when she was missing for 3 days, which they say is child neglect. Akemi blames Satoru and asks why she's being treated like a criminal. She declares she's going to the police herself. As she leaves with Kayo, someone calls out for her to stop. Akemi turns and sees her mom with Yashiro. Her mom kneels and begs for forgiveness. She tells Akemi how they've been estranged ever since she broke up with that guy. She goes on to say she knows better than anyone how tough it is for a single mom to raise a kid. Akemi remembers how her ex-husband used to abuse her until she divorced him. She hugs her mom and cries, and her mom reassures her not to worry about Kayo and promises to take good care of her. Meanwhile, Satoru thanks Yashiro, but he tells Satoru it was him who got them moving. He says because of Satoru, Kayo will be okay now. Kayo thanks Satoru for getting her out of there and leaves with Yashiro and her grandma. As they go, Satoru feels relieved that he managed to save Kayo and ensure her future. Back in school, Satoru's friends are calling him a hero for saving Hinazuki, but he's just sulking. Yashiro walks in and tells Satoru to come to the staff room. He explains that Hinazuki's mom will be out of her life for a few years, so she'll be living with her grandma now. Satoru reminds Yashiro of what he told him earlier. Yashiro then asks if Hinazuki was at his place the whole time. Satoru says they hit her on a bus when the Izumi Elementary ice hockey team wasn't using it anymore. Satoru can't shake off thoughts about the killer's targets, Hiromi and Nakanishi Aya. He makes sure neither of them is ever alone. As he plans, he realizes it'll be tough to get close to Nakanishi Aya since they go to different schools. At home, he asks his mom how to befriend someone he doesn't know. She tells him to just walk up and ask them to be friends. He mentions it's a girl who's always alone. Sachiko tells him that attitude won't get him anywhere and suggests he focus on the positive side. After school, Satoru tells his friends he needs to stop somewhere and says he'll meet them at the kids' center. He goes to watch Aya and takes note of her daily life. He follows her after cram school and sees her routine is pretty simple. He thinks if she's going to be kidnapped, it'll happen right after cram school. As he's following her, his mom surprises him with a call, saying he should lend a hand. On the way home, Yashiro picks them up in his car. While driving, Satoru breaks the silence and asks Yashiro why he's still single. Yashiro replies that you can only get married if you have the right partner at the right time. Satoru then asks how to approach a girl he doesn't know. Yashiro advises him to show off his good side. He tells Satoru that once she takes an interest, she'll let her guard down. Yashiro notices Satoru is impressed by his advice and mentions he relies on logic because he's not great at expressing feelings. The next day after school, they head to their hideout and see that some stuff is missing. Satoru figures someone must have taken it. He asks Kenya if he remembers the guy who showed up late one night when Hinazuki was around. Satoru is convinced that guy is a murderer targeting kids. Hiromi asks what makes him so sure. Satoru explains that the main reason he kidnapped Hinazuki was to protect her from the murderer. Satoru talks about how back in 1988, in his original life, Kayo, Hiromi, and Nakanishi Aya disappeared and were later found dead. He felt guilty for not being able to save them and tried hard to forget it all, but it left a huge hole in his heart. Satoru, Hiromi, and Kenya go to meet Nakanishi Aya. They introduce themselves, and Kenya asks her about the book she's reading. She tells him it's Shakespeare. Suddenly, Aya realizes who they are, saying they were the kids always sneaking into the building. Satoru admits he didn't notice the hideout was visible. Kenya gets annoyed, calling their hideout childish, saying boys are always sneaking around making secret bases and pretending to be heroes. As she leaves, Kazu unexpectedly stops her, saying hideouts are symbols of adventure for guys. She runs off, calling them a bunch of weirdos. The next day at their hideout, Hiromi tells Satoru that Aya should be at the park soon. Satoru wonders how they can get closer to her when Aya suddenly shows up, saying she decided to check out their hideout. Kazu breaks the silence and welcomes her. The following day at the hideout, Kenya asks Satoru if they're done playing detective. Satoru tells him it's not over yet. That night before bed, he remembers how his mom told Sawada she figured out who the real culprit was, meaning it was someone she knew back in 1998. He thinks that now now the killer has lost his target, he'll definitely look for a substitute. The next day at school, Hiromi goes to the staff room and bumps into Misato, who tells him to get out of her way. On the walk home after school, Hiromi asks Satoru if he's noticed that Misato has been alone lately. He says she's been cut off from the rest of the class since the lunch money incident. Satoru tells him he'll talk to her on Monday. The next morning, Satoru heads to school and tells Sachiko he might be a bit late. In class, he wonders how to start a conversation with Misato. He goes out to meet her but sees her getting on a bus. Hiromi tells Satoru that Yashiro invited Misato to the ice hockey game. Kenya asks if they should follow her, but Satoru says he should go alone. Satoru heads to the hockey game and spots Misato sitting alone. He thinks she'd be a perfect target for a killer who just lost 2 others. As she gets up, he decides to follow her. Yashiro comes out of the bathroom and is surprised to see Satoru. Satoru tells him he wants to talk to Misato. They start looking for her, but only see a truck driving away. Satoru tells Yashiro he needs to check something out. While Yashiro drives, he tells Satoru that if what he's saying is true, then there's a crime happening. Satoru calls it playing detective and explains it's a way to be cautious about kidnapping. He finally admits he used the excuse of things being awkward between them to use Misato as bait. Yashiro asks if that's why he's been acting friendly with people lately. Satoru says he wants to fill the big emptiness in everyone's hearts. Yashiro warns Satoru he might regret using Misato as bait, but he shouldn't feel guilty. He says good and bad deeds are just 2 sides of the same coin, things people do to make up for their flaws. He tells Satoru he's done all sorts of things to get closer to someone while tapping his finger on the steering wheel. As they drive through a tunnel, Satoru asks if he wants some candy. Yashiro says there's no candy because the car isn't his. Satoru looks up and sees a wicked grin on Yashiro's face. Yashiro tells Satoru he can tell he lied about one thing. He says Satoru isn't pretending there's a kidnapper. He's acting like he knows there is one. He can't believe anyone would guess his thoughts. As they pass the truck, Yashiro tells Satoru that the person in the truck is Shiratori Jun's dad, not Misato. Yashiro says he didn't realize until he saw him following Nakanishi Aya. He then explains to Satoru how he carried out his plans. Satoru thinks to himself that the truth was right in front of him, but he wouldn't accept it. He remembers seeing Yashiro Gaku on the suspect list at Sawada's place, but since his mom's name was also there, he didn't think it was important. Satoru is stunned to realize that Yashiro is the killer. He tries to unbuckle his seatbelt from Yashiro, but it won't budge. Yashiro says it's the end for both of them. He gets out of the car and pushes it into the river, leaving Satoru to drown. Yashiro tells a story from his past back in 6th grade. One of the girls in his class brought him a box with about 7 or 8 hamsters. He took them home, filled a big wine bottle with water, and tossed them all in. When he came back to his room 3 hours later, one hamster had survived by standing on the other dead ones. He decided to keep it and named it Spice. Ever since he met Spice, he started killing anyone he saw with a thread hanging above their heads. But one time, a boy messed up his plans, and a thread appeared above his head too, but the boy didn't die. So, he decided to keep an eye on the boy, and that's Fujinuma Satoru. The scene shifts to Sachiko doing different things. While she's on a direct train to Ueno, she remembers Satoru's exact words when they told her the news. As she wakes up to make breakfast, she walks into a room with tears in her eyes and greets Satoru's lifeless body. The next day at the general hospital, Dr. Kitamura tells Satoru it doesn't feel like he's been in a coma for 15 years. He mentions that Satoru will soon start rehab. Satoru reflects on how his mom spent 4 hours a day taking care of him for those 15 years. For the last 3 years, she's been using an EMS device to prep for the day he wakes up. The doctor then asks him what he remembers before the coma. Satoru tries to think back, but those memories feel locked away. Dr. Kitamura hands him a mirror to look at himself. He says his face must look way different from when he was 11, but with his memories all mixed up, he might still be struggling to figure out who he is. The next day, Satoru wakes up to see his mom, who tells him he has visitors Kenya and Hiroma coming to see him. Satoru recognizes them as the 2 classmates he was close with. He notes that Kenya is now a lawyer, and Hiromi is a doctor. They have a good time chatting about the most random stuff. After finishing his usual exercise routine, a lady catches his eye. Satoru looks up, tears filling his eyes when he sees Hinazuki holding a baby. He congratulates her. She tells him she's married to Hiromi, and they named the baby Mirai. Satoru says he knew Hiromi wanted to say something when he visited. She mentions they weren't sure if it was okay to be happy since it was because of them that he ended up in a coma. Satoru reassures her that he's in control of his own life, so she doesn't need to feel guilty about anything. He adds that he believes he's where he is because of his own choices. Hinazuki says for a guy who's been in a coma for 15 years, he still knows how to talk. She thanks Satoru for helping her in the past, then takes her leave, saying she'll come back another time. Later in the day, Satoru is sketching Keo and her baby when his mom walks in and asks how he's doing. He says he's okay, and mentions that Keo came to visit. Sachiko tells him she ran into Keo on her way back and thinks the baby is adorable. Just as Satoru is about to ask her something, she suddenly jumps up to close all the curtains. Satoru asks what's up, and she explains that Gossip magazine photographers want to cover his story now that he's woken up from a 15-year coma. Dr. Kitamura walks in, and Satoru asks if he'll ever be able to walk again, but the doc says it's up to him. Satoru decides he should double his rehab routine starting today. During his rehab and exercise sessions, Satoru struggles but finally makes it through the program. After a while, Satoru Satoru goes to meet a girl named Kumi who's sitting outside. He tells her he heard her surgery is coming up. She says her brother is donating his bone marrow, so she's feeling scared about it. Suddenly, a guy in a suit shows up and greets Kumi. He asks Satoru if he remembers him, and eventually introduces himself as his 5th grade teacher, Yashiro Gaku. He tells Satoru he changed his name to Nishizono Manabu, and that he met Kumi at a charity event for leukemia, which is how he referred her to this hospital. The next day, Satoru meets Yashiro and suggests they chat for a bit. Yashiro takes him up to a restricted floor in an elevator. While reminiscing about the past, Satoru interrupts him to say he's regained his memory. Satoru remembers saving Hinazuki and how they made sure Nakanishi Aya and Masato weren't alone. He calls Yashiro and tells him he's got his memory back. Satoru thinks back to his chat with his friends. Kenya mentions that Masato said she'd stop by. Satoru thought she hated him, but Kenya points out she's the one who suggested a fundraiser to help with his hospital bills. Kenya says seeing Satoru wake up after 15 years made him super happy, so he didn't want to bring up the past. He tells Satoru he's fought enough already and doesn't want to bother him while he's still healing. Kenya adds that Satoru should bring them along if he plans to do anything. Satoru remembers Eri's words and realizes he has friends he can trust. He finally drops the bomb that the killer is Yashiro. Back in their conversation, Yashiro says he noticed Satoru flinch when he tapped his finger on his wheelchair. He tells Satoru how he messed up his plan 15 years ago and asks how Satoru could predict his thoughts. Yashiro figures Satoru has a cell phone in his pocket and grabs it as he ends the recording. He claims the statute of limitations on the case ran out 15 years ago, so Satoru wanted him to talk about cases that were still open, saying Satoru would never catch him. He shows Satoru a text from Kumi-chan and says her IV drip bags are laced with muscle relaxants that have his fingerprints on them. Yashiro tells Satoru he's given a young girl a merciful death, worried about her surgery, and now he's going to take his own life by jumping off the rooftop. He says even if Satoru figures out how he predicted his thoughts, there's nothing he can do to save his life, but he can save Kumi's. Satoru asks how he'll know if he spares her life. Yashiro says there's a possibility, but too bad time's up. He says he'll pour his heart into writing Satoru's goodbye to his mom. Satoru remembers telling his mom he got his memory back and how he wanted to live life to the fullest. He tells Yashiro how his dad left when he was born and he doesn't even know what he looks like. He explains how Yashiro took his place and was like a father to him. Yashiro says he waited 15 years for Satoru to wake up and that losing him also meant losing the drive that defined him. Satoru tells him he saved Hinazuki Kaio, Nakanishi Aya, Hiromi, and Yuuki, including his mom, whom Yashiro killed in the future. Yashiro asks what he means by the future. Satoru explains that knowing what's coming is why he could foil Yashiro's plans and keep everyone safe. Yashiro claims he could have killed him anytime and could do it right now. Satoru confidently replies that he couldn't do it for 15 years because he needed him. As Yashiro moves closer, Satoru hits him and tries to jump off the rooftop, but Yashiro catches him. Yashiro remembers trying to kill Satoru while he was in a coma. Satoru tells him he killed several of his friends but doesn't hate him anymore because he's the only one who truly knows him. With tears in his eyes, Yashiro lets go of Satoru's wheelchair and falls from the building, saying he can't live without Satoru. He sees that his mom and friends set up foam for him to land on, knowing what would happen. The police arrest Yashiro for attempted murder. Kenya asks if Kumi is okay, and Satoru says they didn't tell her what happened because of her upcoming surgery. Satoru reflects on how he lost his life between ages 11 and 25, saying that time lost is his treasure, and in a time where only he was erased, his friends spent precious moments of their lives for him. Satoru now makes a living as a manga artist, and has experienced a revival since the last time. He travels to Hokkaido to meet up with his childhood friends, and they all catch up and have a great time together.